Welcome in to another new podcast from CoatingsPro Magazine. As always, I'm your host, Ben Dubose, news editor with the AMP Publications team. Today, we're continuing our member profile series, spotlighting influential members within our association, particularly those with relevance to the protective coatings world and what's going on out in the field with coatings contractors. And one of those people is my friend Charles Brown of GPI. Charles, who you may know best as Charlie, has over 37 years of experience in the coatings industry as an industrial hygienist, performing safety audits, hazard assessments, air monitoring, as well as teaching safety courses for contractors, state agencies, and even the federal government. He was the operations manager for an industrial painting contractor in Maryland for 14 years. He's an AMP instructor for the C3 and C5 courses and is a past SSPC chairman for the Painting Contractor Certification Program Advisory Committee. He's also the chair of the AMP Standards Committee, SC24, Environmental Health and Safety Regulatory, and he's a member as well of Standards Committee SC25 for accreditation. He's a member of the AAS HTO TSP2 National Bridge Preservation Partnerships Coatings Group and a member of the AAS HTO Domestic Scan 1503 Successful Preservation Practices for Steel Bridge Coatings. Charlie is now an AMP Senior Certified Coatings Inspector with bridge certification and an AMP Certified Protective Coatings Specialist. He currently works for Greenman-Pedersen, Inc. Again, that's GPI, as the Deputy Director of Coatings for their Columbia, Maryland office, where he handles public as well as private projects. Folks, as you can tell by that bio, Charlie's a busy guy, so I want to jump right into this. Charlie, thanks so much for taking the time. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you for that intro, and I'm doing well. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with our member profile series, this is where we talk about our members from the association and the industry at large and pick their brains, certainly about industry trends, topics of the day, but also about their links over the years to our association at AMP, formerly some combination of NACE International or SSPC, the Society for Protective Coatings. Of course, those organizations merged in 2021. And in this series, we talk about how the associations have benefited our guest, along with insight on what we can do moving forward now that those organizations are under the AMP umbrella as we move into the mid-2020s and beyond. Charlie, I think a good place to start, I gave your career bio. For anyone who's not familiar with GPI and its space within the corrosion control and protective coatings industry, what does GPI do and what are the types of projects that it's involved in?
Oh, thank you for that. GPI is we're a leading multidiscipline engineering firm that has been providing professional design, architecture, planning, and construction inspection testing services to all levels of government and industry throughout the Eastern United States for over 50 years. Our coatings experts and professionals we have consist of approximately 100 coatings inspectors, professionals. We have a full service laboratory as well that does coatings and testing work. That's our GPI laboratories, and we also have an underwater engineering service group that provides underwater inspections, nuclear division that does nuclear inspection work and nuclear power plants. Our coatings experts and our coatings inspectors are spread out throughout the United States, and so that we have people in all different offices all over the country where we can perform work and help with clients in need of coatings inspection work, or we also do failure analysis work and so forth.
And you've been there about 15 years, looking at your bio, correct?
That's correct. About 15 years I've been with GPI. I first started out as a area engineer for the Maryland State Highway Administration, working for GPI as a consultant. I worked there putting together all their paint programs for painting their bridges, where I did inspection on bridges. I did coatings assessments, and then I actually put together the actual contracts for bidding, did estimating and so forth. And then in the end, went out and did inspection work with the coatings inspectors on site when the contractors were doing the actual work.
Okay. So in terms of your overall time in the industry, I believe it's at least 30 years. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair. I mean, I started as a safety industrial hygiene consultant doing air monitoring on bridge projects back in the early to mid 90s. And then I transitioned to work for a actual bridge painting contractor.
Okay.
for 14 years, and then I transitioned to come to GPI back in 2008 to work as a consultant.
Okay. So what's been the biggest changes over that time, looking at this from a 30,000-foot view? I know some things are still as important now as they were in the 90s. There's also all sorts of brand new considerations that when you or GPI are looking at a project that you have to take into account in 2023. What are some of the changes that you've seen in this industry over your time in it, and what are some of the market trends that you're dealing with a lot today?
Well, the big pushback when I first got into it, back in the mid 90s was the new lead in construction standard 192662,
Hmm.
which hit in May of 1993. And that really changed the coatings industry as a whole because of the issue with lead. And when you're dealing with structural steel, whether it's a bridge, a tank, whether it's piping on a offshore work platform, or you know petrochemical facilities and so forth, the lead issue came to the forefront, and that was a big push back then. And so that's been around for, well, May of 93 to 2023. That's what, like 30 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow, has it been 30 years? Dang. Okay. So it's been 30 years. Now that's changed a lot because now we're getting to where we're doing work on steel structures that doesn't necessarily have lead paint on it, but we're also having to still deal with the dust, and we don't want to do open blasting because we have issues with fugitive dust and the EPA regulations where you don't do open blasting and so forth. So, we're still involved in doing a lot of containment work, but the focus now has really been changed to volatile organic compounds, VOCs.
Hmm.
Whereas we used to apply like alkyds that were high in VOCs, and vinyls that were really high in VOCs. We're getting to the point where, like, from what I've been reading and hearing about, like in California, where they're not using any paint that contains VOCs at all. So that's kind of the driving force behind some of the coatings work that's being done out there. And then some other parts of the country are really, like in Maryland, they have a pretty strict VOC limit on coating. So that's really changed a lot from when we were painting, with vinyls and other types of paints that contain VOC. So that trend is starting to increase and getting bigger. And so when we take a look at the way this organization, not just AMP, but the whole painting industry itself, we're tending to move towards different types of coatings. And so that's something that everybody's looking at, doing different types of coatings, using different coatings. And so it's something that's really going to be coming to the forefront, I think, in the future.
I read off your certifications earlier when I was introducing you for this episode, and I'm imagining those are even more important now than they were a few decades ago, simply because as we're talking about these new coatings, there's so many technical properties that go into their application and whether it's a success or a failure. And of course, having the background in terms of certifications really makes an inspector, an applicator, whatever capacity you're in, it makes it all the more likely that you're actually going to succeed and that you have the background knowledge to know whether a given system has been installed appropriately. Why have you gone the extra mile to get so many of these certs? There's certainly some baselines that I think almost anybody in the industry has to have because they're specced out when clients give out a project or a general contractor, whoever it may be. But you've clearly gone the extra mile in terms of the long list of certifications that we read off earlier, and I know you're involved as an instructor as well. Why have you really gone in on that as something that's particularly important to your career development?
The main reason is that I can provide my clients with experience and knowledge based on my actual hands-on work experience, but also the training that I received and getting these certifications. The big issue for me is I still learn to this day. I mean, yes, I'm a senior certified coatings inspector under AMP, but I mean, there's different coatings that are coming out that I have to learn. And So I'm go back to school reading and looking at them, talking to paint manufacturers, understanding how some of these new paint systems are work, how they work and how they're applied. So that kind of experience in education never goes away. You're doing that throughout your entire career. So if you're a coatings inspector, you're not just going to be, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, because you might get on a project where now all of a sudden you're using a coal tar. Well, that's
Mhm.
an old product, but you get into like a polyaspartic, which is a newer coating system, or a plural component product where, that's not something that was used a lot. And so you have to learn and continuously, you know, stay up on your game. And that's one of the reasons why going to like the AMP conference or the NACE or SSPC, whatever you want to call it, back in the day up to today, always was very helpful because it gives you more information and more knowledge that you can sit in on seminars, talks, where people go in and talk about a project where they did a plural component application on this product, or they did an application of some type of coating or wrap on an underground pipeline.
Yeah.
So it gives you all this information, and again, as a coating inspector, you're continually learning, and that's one of the reasons why I continue to get the certifications and do the work that I do, is to stay on top of things that are out there.
Yeah. So two-part question related to that. First off, what was your history with NACE and or SSPC prior to the 2021 launch of AMP? What were the things you did with those associations? And, we can talk about the certification programs as well. And then the second part of it, what are your thoughts on, I guess, A, the merger, but B, specifically the education? There's been a new rollout of the revised CIP program under the AMP umbrella that you were just touching on there. What do you think the combination and the modification of the program the last couple of years potentially means moving forward?
Okay, so give me the first question first.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Your history with NACE
Oh,
and or SSPC before.
okay. Well, my history with NACE goes back to 1996 when I got my back then it was called your level 1 CIP,
Yeah.
codes inspector certification. And then so I would always I started working for a painting contractor in 95, got the NACE certification in 96. Um, the NACE certification is something that's been around for a long time. It's one of the things that NACE does really well, is their coatings inspector program, and in teaching coating inspectors how to be coating inspectors, how to, document, review, the three things that you do in as a coating inspector, and witness. The thing with SSPC was I got involved in that because that was part of the program for the company that I worked for at the time, was getting certified to our QP1 and QP2. So we did that in 1995 and got certified to QP1 and QP2. And so I got involved with SSPC from 1995 onward because of requiring our certification, and then finding out that then we had to do the C3 trainings, and then we had to do QCS training, or quality control training for employees, and to make the whole program work. And so I got really heavily involved in SSPC and became the vice chairman for the Painting Contractor Certification Program Advisory Committee. And then I also got involved in doing the C3 training through SSPC back in 97. And then I really was involved with SSPC a lot more than I was with NACE. At the time, we felt that SSPC was more contractor oriented versus where NACE was more inspection slash a facility owner oriented. So we kind of went with, still got NACE publications and kept up on stuff that NACE was putting out, but we mainly were under the SSPC looking at everything they were doing for training. And I got really involved, became a tutorials chairman, finally became the chairman for the PCP advisory committee, helped work on the QP1, QP2, QP3 standards, revisions, helped put together the disciplinary reaction criteria checklist that's used for disciplining contractors that do things that they shouldn't do. And then I got involved with the actual audit checklist, doing where the auditors come out and do the actual auditing of contractors, help with putting together the checklist. So I was really involved with that for quite a period of time.
So now the second part of that. What do you think about the transition to AMP and specifically the CIP changes over the last couple of years and how that program's evolving?
So I can't really, the changes, putting everything under one umbrella with AMP, meaning the merger between NACE and SSPC, that's a good thing. The changes with the CIP program, I'm not that familiar with them.
Okay.
Because I haven't been taking the CIP. Now
Okay,
I've
fair
had
enough.
some folks that have taken it, and there have been some changes. They've gone to the exam where you do your tool exam, meaning you're working with the tools, your DFT gauges and things of that nature in your level 1 course. That exam is done on site, but then you take an offsite exam. So those are some of the changes that I'm familiar with. I've heard back from some people. The CIP class is something that is not to be taken lightly. It is a good course. It still is a good course from everybody that's been talking to me about that has taken it recently. But it's a course where you got to go in there and you got to work. You got to pay attention and you got to do the
Yeah.
work. Or it's going to be very difficult for you. So I think it's still it's still a good quality program. And with that being said, I know that they have the CIP 1 and 2, and then they do the peer review.
Yeah.
And again, it's still a quality program, and it's out there, and then everybody's using it. And I think it's probably one of the best things NACE/AMP has out there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the merger as a whole then, because as you mentioned, you were clearly involved with both legacy organizations. Why is this combination beneficial, and what are the strengths of this organization now that it's combining both the legacy groups?
Well, I mean, the strengths are that you have one group that deals with coatings work, which was like SSPC.
Hmm.
And NACE did some coatings work too, don't get me wrong, but SSPC was more towards coatings, contractor, where NACE was more, pipeline, offshore, corrosion engineering. I mean, of course, NACE standed for the National Association for Corrosion Engineers. So you're talking about a group of engineers and corrosion folks that dealt with corrosion specifically. Some of the things that were done, a lot of it, and when you start talking about getting into, some of the papers that were given at this past AMP conference, like microbiological or whatever they call. Sorry, I'm not saying it right, but talking about microbes and coatings and corrosion and how they affect, like steel hulls from ships, platforms, oil platforms out in the Gulf of Mexico. Those are all the kind of things that you associate with NACE and corrosion engineers that work on corrosion. So the merging of the two gives you the whole big umbrella of, we do everything under the sun when it comes to corrosion engineering, when it comes to coatings application, coatings removal, inspection, contractor certifications, coating inspector certifications. Now we also have concrete.
Hmm.
Concrete's a big medium out there in today's construction world, and SSPC had a very good contractor coatings inspection program. Between the two organizations, putting them together, they have well over 80, I don't know, 100. I've lost track on how many training programs are out there now between the two organizations from the merger that will benefit facility owners, contractors, coatings inspectors, um, and it's just a wealth of information that's available under one roof.
Is there anything that we can potentially be doing better as an association, or is there any, I guess, areas that we should be targeting as we enter the mid to late 2020s?
So what I have noticed is the two organizations are still working on merging together.
Hmm.
It hasn't been completed, and that might not happen for another couple of years. Who knows? Because there's so much between the two organizations that had to be
Right.
melded together, and it's
Right.
you have a thinking of to do stuff one way at one organization and a different way at the other organization. And so with that being said, I mean, you have some overlap, you have some bureaucracy, and so it's going to take some time to straighten all that out. I'm hoping that it gets straightened out and then moves forward. Um, so, and that's the only thing I can see that there might need to be some additional work done. I mean, again, both organizations have a wealth of information under all one roof now, which does make it nice for facility owners, contractors, inspectors, or whoever to come in and, if you have to deal with pipeline or you have to deal with, a steel tank or offshore platform or a ship, now you're kind of all under one roof.
Mhm. In addition to your work with the associations, you also deal with our publications team here at AMP, and you're a member of the editorial advisory group at CoatingsPro, correct?
Yes. I had been working or dealing with the editor of CoatingsPro, Stephanie Chiswick, for a number of years.
Hmm.
She had contacted me when I was still working at the Maryland State Highway Administration about having her come out and take a look at a project. So I took her out and she got to go on a platform of containment, got to actually see what the containment was like and walk the platform and see the coatings project, where it was safe. There was no abrasive blasting going on, but so she got to see something up personal and close. And then from that point forward, we just had an association together where, she'll ask me questions and, I'll help her out with, answering the questions. Or a couple years ago, I did a little symposium at the conference on respirators and on something else. I forgot what it was. And so we've had a working relationship for a number of years. And she asked me if I would be interested, and I was like, "Oh, sure." I read the CoatingsPro Magazine all the time. I find it quite interesting to read the various jobs that are highlighted, and it's kind of neat. So I was like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Sure, I'd love to help out.
Why has that been so beneficial to you over the years? I know you've worked with Stephanie in some capacity long before being part of the editorial advisory group. Why
Correct.
is Coatings Pro so useful to you and a worthwhile use of your time on top of,
Uh,
obviously the responsibilities you have with your day job?
Well, it's easy because I mean they highlight different kinds of projects that are out there and different products that are being applied, different cleaning techniques, or you'll look at a job highlight in there and they'll have had a problem and they explain to you how they fixed the problem in the article. So it's basically a resource guide to for me to see all different kinds of projects out there and all different types of work, whether it's a ship, offshore platform, piping, a roof. One of the jobs I read about was a roofing job they did, which I've never personally done something like that, but it was very interesting to read about it. So they have multiple different types of disciplines in there when it comes to coatings work, all the way from, like I said, ships, offshore platform, bridges, tanks,
Yep.
roofing, et cetera, et cetera. It's neat, and you can learn from it. And if you ever come across it in your life, meaning your work life, then hey, I read about that. Let me go take a look at that again. And
Yeah.
so it's a beneficial thing. It's all part of learning.
When we talk about learning, what would you advise to someone that's in your shoes from 30 years ago? And what I mean by that is someone that's just getting started in this industry today. Maybe they went to, the AMP annual conference last month in Denver. They're just trying to sort of get their feet wet in the industry and really get started. What are some of the things, both at an association level and beyond, that you would advise any newcomers to look into or take advantage of as they try and get a foothold in this industry?
That's a good question. I'd recommend kind of the way I did it. I found out that I was going to be involved in this working for a painting contractor. So I went in and just started finding as much as I could. I mean, I would go to the conferences, and then as well as I do at the conferences, they have all sorts of training available to you as a full conference attendee. They have workshops, they have papers that are given. My first conference that I went to was 1995, and I think it was Dallas, Texas, I think. And I must have gone to 7 or 8 different workshops about safety, about rigging, humidity control, coatings instrumentation, and I just did as many as I could, and I just got involved in as much as I could. And then I started going to some committee meetings, and getting involved in the committee is another way of getting your foot in the door and learning, because you might
Yep.
not know exactly what's going on, but being in the committee, you hear things and you see and learn by being on that committee. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you really want to get into it, jump in with both feet and just get as much information and do as much training. Do CIP, if you're going to be doing a lot of concrete work, get your coatings inspector certification. If you're going to be dealing with lead, do your C3 common person for deleting of industrial structures. If you're actually going to be an applicator, then you're going to have to go through CAS and get your CAS certification, which is your craft worker applicator certification. Um, Again, you can do as little or as much as you want. Um, for me, I just went in and put feet because I didn't know any other way how to do it.
That's Charlie Brown, Deputy Director of Coatings for Greenman-Pedersen Incorporated, based out of Columbia, Maryland. Charlie, before we let you go, what does the next few years look like potentially for you? You're getting close to 40 years in the industry. Anything
Yeah.
new you're looking to do? Is it status quo? What does the 2020s look like for Charlie Brown and GPI?
Well, for us, we are always looking for new and different projects. For me, we just finished up a really interesting project. I was actually there today. It was the
Hmm,
working on a subway tunnel in Washington, D.C.,
okay.
um, doing coatings work on a steel liner for that tunnel, um, which was something that it's steel line tunnel, so it's steel coating. I mean, steel that was being coated, similar to steel structure, just something different. And so again, the sky's the limit. We've done bridge work. We've worked in we did a job in a dam on a spillway. We've done work on multiple bridges. We do a lot of work on tanks, steel structures. We have a cathodic protection division that's really getting into more shipborne stuff, and so the sky's the limit when it comes to the coatings work. I always stress to everybody that if you want to get into this industry and become, say, a coatings inspector, or maybe even eventually becoming, contractor or operations manager, start at the bottom and work hard, and you will go places, because this business needs people that are willing to get involved, work hard. We need the people like that.
Hmm. For any listener who may want to learn more from you or GPI, what's the best way that they can do that?
You can shoot me an email. My email address is cbrown@gpinet.com. You can always shoot me an email, or they can email GPI. We have a general email address.
Yep.
But they can always email me, and if I don't know the answer or who to put in contact with, I'll find out and forward their information on to somebody.
And the website is gpinet.com for Greenman-Pedersen, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, folks. Well, that will do it for today. For Charlie Brown, I'm Ben Dubose, news editor with the AMP Publications team. Thank you for listening to this member profile episode of the Coatings Pro interview series, and stay tuned because we should be back with more in the near future.